students. So for today's video, we will be learning on the transactions pertaining to rent expense. So we are to identify on how we will record transactions pertaining to rent expense. So the transaction or the problem for transaction 2 for rent expense on January 2, 2020 paid 750,000 for 1 month's rent. Okay, so first identify if it is a business transaction or not. If it is a business transaction, you need to record it. If it is not, then skip the problem. Now, for this problem, it is classified as a business transaction. Why? Because balik-balik ta. That is why I said on the other video that the accounting equation is very useful when you are to analyze problems and transactions on a company. Okay, so the asset equals liabilities plus owner's equity. In this problem, it affects your accounting equation in the account's asset. Why? From the word paid, it means may inilabas kang pera para bayaran ang iyong renta. Then si cash is an asset account. So it does affect your asset, right? It affects your asset. Now, for the rent is classified as an expense. Okay. Why it is classified as an expense? It is because the company cannot operate it can operate, but it is an expense of the company to pay the monthly rent. Because if you are not paying your monthly rent, the landlord of the building kung saan kayo nag-ooperate ng inyong company is baka palayasin kayo. So, it means na it is your responsibility to pay your monthly rental. Now, it is classified as an expense. Okay, in the expense, it affects your owner's equity. If you remember, in our expanded accounting equation, assets equals to liabilities plus owner's equity. In the owner's equity, it expanded as my revenue, my expense, at my withdrawal. Okay, wait lang. My withdrawal. So, it really does affect your accounting equation because of the expense which is directly related to your owner's equity. Why? It is because if there is an expense, your owner's equity will decrease. If there is a revenue, your owner's equity will increase. If you are to go back to your statement of comprehensive income, may video ako niyan, it affects your owner's equity because of your net income. Okay, so we will go back to the problem. Paid 7,500 for 1 month's rent. Okay. For the asset, this transaction has classified as a decrease on cash. Why? Ibalik na to. May inilabas kang pera para bayaran ang iyong monthly rental. Okay. Now, on the owner's equity, for the expense, it increases in the amount in the account rent expense. Why it increases? Kasi nga, binayaran mo. So, nag-add ka ng expense sa iyong company through the payment of the monthly rent. Diba? binayaran mo with the cash, it decreases. At naging rent expense siya ng iyong company. Naging expense siya. Okay. So, on how you will record it on your journal entry is, this is a way to record this transaction on your journal. So, this is how you will record the transaction for the rent expense, which is paid 7,500 for 1 month's rent. So, as you notice, ang ato ang date is January 2, 2020. So, you do not need to rewrite the date and the months. Ang kailangan mo lang i-write is the day, which is January 2. Now, as you notice, may nag-leave tayo ng space. Nag-leave tayo ng space para mas i-present natin na ang transaction before the space is ito lahat and the transaction after the space is dito lahat. So, you will always leave a space. Also, for you to present a clean general journal. Because if you will enter the entry dito, so, magiging makalat yung general journal mo. Now, for this transaction, kanina is, ang ating pag-analyze, as we analyze the transaction is, it affects your cash and it affects your rent expense. It decreases your cash and it increases your rent expense. So, we will go back to the normal balances of each of the accounts. Kung ano ka-importante ang accounting equation, ganon din ka-importante ang table ng normal balances ng mga accounts. Because if the accounting equation would let you it would help you understand or analyze the transaction. For the normal balances, it will help you on where to put the accounts, if it's a debit or a credit. So, in this transaction, it has a decrease in cash, which is an asset account. And if an asset account had decreases, you will enter it in the credit side. And if in expense, because it increases in expense, if an expense increases, so you will enter it on the debit side. So, not all the time that cash is on the debit side. So, may mga times nga nagid siya sa credit side, especially if it is a decrease. So, first na imong i-write, always na imong i-write is the credit account. So, the credit account is your rent expense. Next na ilalagay mo is your debit account, which is the cash, because it is decreasing and rent expense is increasing. So, then your explanation on the transaction is you will go back to your problem. So, payment for 1 month's rent. So, you will write your explanation for the transaction is to record the payment for 1 month's rent. Okay. So, in this problem, nag-iisa lang yung amount na given, which is 7,500. So, directly, you will write 7,500 kalinya ni debit the rent expense. Kung saan siya na linya, dito mo ilalagay yung amount. So, it's 7,500. And then, for the cash, ito ang linya niya, ilalagay mo dyan si credit. It's 7,500. So, that is your entry for the rent expense. So the rent expense is on the debit and the cash is on the credit. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something on today's video for the rent expense. See you